Town Manager Act Review Committee meeting of July 27th, 2017. Signing sheets moving around. Everybody make sure to sign. Debbie, I'm missing you.
Thank you.
Forum. So agenda item number 1 is review and approval of meeting minutes from July 13th, 2017. Take a minute or two for everybody to take a look at it and make any comments.
Well, I don't think we can because there's a section missing out of these that we are looking at.
Okay.
So I don't think we can vote on it until.
No. So you're saying, yeah, 1, 2, so a page with 4, 5, and 6 is missing, correct?
I
Okay.
don't think you can vote anyway, right? Because you weren't here for the.
You weren't
meeting.
here.
I wasn't
so
here,
you
but
can't
it-
vote,
it
and
doesn't
neither was
matter.
Steve. It's only 3 people.
So we don't even have.
We don't have
quorum,
enough people to
folks.
vote anyway, so,
So we'll table that item.
yeah, we don't have enough people.
So item number 2 was what we put off to the other side for the last meeting. We do have the line sections been in our hands as a committee since last meeting. I'll open up just discussion about that item since we have a lean committee. We're missing several several members of our committee to offer to that. So I'll open up the floor to discussion of taking a first pass at putting lines and then tabling that, or if you
I
want
would-
to
I would make a
procedurally wait
motion
until
that-
everybody is here and wait.
I think we should wait because almost half of the committee isn't here tonight. I mean, there are some provisions that I think any reasonable person would agree don't need to be reviewed.
Yep.
But just as a courtesy to the members who couldn't make it tonight, it's a shame. I mean, we do have a quorum,
Yep.
but this is a very important act, and everybody has pretty strong feelings.
Yeah, and I think this is, to your point, this is a point where everybody's would like to be present and accounted for this step. I would agree with that. Is there any other further discussion from other committee members regarding that point? Seeing, Steve?
Yeah,
You're good?
fine with me.
Seeing that, what we'll do is we'll table item number 2, which was that line-by-line review. I'd ask everybody to be prepared for the next meeting to do that. Which leads us to item number 3 on the agenda, which is the opportunity for the public to address the committee, review email correspondence from the public. We had in our packet from last time, I don't know, Steve, if you've gotten that from the last meeting, we have received about a half dozen emails from citizens. We received one, I think, that came in since our last meeting. Is that just the one that came?
I'm not sure. What did it, do you remember what it said?
It was one regarding about having a committee and having it being regular. I think that's the only one that came in. Anyways, what I wanted to do, have a discussion with the committee, was just having the ability to do some email correspondence back.
Mr. Chairman, would you bring Mr. Holman up to date on what we discussed to see
Okay.
whether he's in agreement or whether he feels we should go forward?
So, Mr. Holman, we basically passed over item number 1 because we're missing a page in the notes on the last meeting minutes. On item number 2, since we are missing several members of the committee that expressed interest, or expressed that they wouldn't be able to be here from some time, that we're going to table that until we have a full committee to do that because of the importance of that line by line. And then we're on to item number 3.
No,
We had discussed this, Mr. Holman, before you arrived. It was my perception that there were only going to be 5 of the 9 of us here. I wasn't aware that you were, well, now we have 6.
6.
You weren't present when we discussed this, and it didn't seem like there was enough bodies here for such an important matter. I
uh-huh.
didn't think you were showing up.
No, I was just engaged in something. I'm sorry about being late, but, no, I think we should go forward, personally.
So everybody else in the committee had signaled a need to have the folks on
Oh,
the
well,
committee be present, so.
we should take a vote on it. I think. Someone should make a motion. I think it would be in order.
I think we have Dawn Marie's input on here too.
We do.
Yeah, we do. So that would leave 2 members not having any input on lines.
And it kind of tips it
Yeah.
back.
So back up. One step back. I'll go back to item number 3 and entertain the further discussion about it and see. if-
2.
I'm sorry, item number 2.
Two.
Thank you. Leave item number 3, go back to item number 2, and go back through and do the line by line.
Anybody gonna make a motion? I mean, that's what I would think would be in order.
Well, I mean,
Am I-
my thoughts are that last meeting, I think you mentioned the importance of attending, and everybody theoretically agreed to the date, and then obviously personal commitments or business commitments got in the way. That happens with a volunteer board, obviously.
Sure.
Again, I had great reservation when only 5 of us were here out of the 9. Now at least we have 2/3 of the members here. So I leave it up to my colleagues whether they feel comfortable going forward or they feel that we need the input of 1/3 of the committee that's not here, and hope that they show up, or, you know, there's 8 people or so, if not all 9. But I leave that up to you, Mr. Chairman. I look forward to your direction, your
Well,
wisdom.
I'll offer up the, like I said, we opened up the item to be considered, so at this point, I haven't heard a motion. I'd like to, when I have a motion, I'd like to just move on to where we were back in the agenda.
So if we, without a motion, we just move on, or I would think that's what we do, but that's one opinion. I mean, you're gonna make a motion, Alan, or?
Well, I think we're having discussion, debate before, right?
Yeah, well, we can,
Yes.
yeah.
So I don't want to impose my will. I'm looking
I'll
for.
make a motion that we start the process.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and seconded that we start the process.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any further discussion?
It's already
Seeing none?
happened.
Huh?
It's already occurred.
Yeah. I-
No, I think in an effort to move forward, we need to get her done. In the words of that famous comedian, let's
Yeah.
get her done.
Um,
The comedian, right?
It's been divorced about 7 times.
Any other further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. No.
Well, you don't get to
Did
vote.
everybody vote?
The chairperson doesn't vote?
Okay.
No, chairperson.
Motion
no.
carried.
Oh, and vote-
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Chairperson only gets to.
If there's a tie?
If there's a tie.
Oh, okay.
Kind of like the president pro tem of the Senate, you know.
Do we have one
I
no?
didn't know what you're talking about. So, yeah, we're
He
gonna,
can't
we're gonna
vote.
go through the line.
You can't
Just
vote.
call it use.
Apparently
call
he
it
can't
u-
vote.
Call it unanimous.
He would only vote if there's a tie, Al said.
You can't make.
There was a
motions.
majority, so we're gonna move forward.
Right, and he can't make
We're
motions, yeah.
Leads them.
No, you can do anything you want.
So I'll open up. We go down line by line.
Sounds like a plan. Just I would question, everybody get a copy of Blythe's response or letter that, I thought it was really well done personally, and I think we should send her a little note thanking her through the committee. I personally thanked her, but I think the chair should send her a note thanking her. Did you have a chance to read it?
I did.
I got that space look that, okay.
Yes, Professor, I did.
We're kind of having a side discussion. We get back to the
Yep.
order at hand,
Yep.
which is
Yep.
going through lining. So I'll just start down the list. Item, line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4, line 5, line 6, line 7, line 8, line 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. I will hold. 27, I will hold.
26, did you have?
26 and 27. 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37. I'm going to hold 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, and 42, and 43. I have a question for the group on that. Line 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, and 50. I have a hold from a committee member that had emailed myself and Deb. 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64.
We should start hold, yeah, can you hold 63 to
Yep,
73?
63 to 73, Deb? Thank you. I had held just 63 and 64. So 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, 108,
We have a hold from Donna Marie, right?
108 to 112.
Right, that's what she said.
Okay. 113, 114,
And she held, I think she held, her email held those two, 14 and 15,
okay.
right? I think it's
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
14 and 15.
116, 117, I put a hold on 117 because it relates back to one of the earlier line holds, just a reference. 118, 119, 120, 121, I put a hold on those two.
120 and 121?
120 and 121, 122, 123, 124,
3, 4, and 5, Donna Marie held.
yep, thank you. 126, 127, 128, 129, 130, 131, 132, 133, 134, and I have a 135 through 38 is held.
Yeah. That's what she put too.
Okay, that's from the email. 139, 140, 141, 142, 143, 144, 145, and 146 are held.
Which ones are held? I'm sorry.
145 and 146.
Okay.
147, 148, 149, 150, 151, 152, 153, 154, 155, 156, 157, 158, 159, 160, 161, 162,
Well,
160.
Donna Marie had 59 to 64.
Okay, I didn't see
In her
that. Thank
email.
you for bringing that out.
59, that's the last one for her.
59 to 64. So 159 to 164. 165, 166, 167, 168, 169, 170, 171, 172, 173, 174, 175, 176, 177, 178, 179, 180, 181, 182, 183, 184, 185, 186, 187,
I'd like
188.
to hold 187 to 191.
87 through 190? One?
Yep. So 192 and 193, 194, 195, 196, 197, 198, 199, 200, 201, 202, 203, 204, 205, 206, 207, 208, 209, and 210. So I'd like to take item number 209, and if anybody has a hold for something they feel is missing from the act, they'd like to hold that number. So I'm going to hold 209 because I have a couple items I would like to have be considered.
I'd like to make a motion that all the line items that were not held be approved.
Second that motion.
We have a motion for all the line items that were not held be approved. Any other discussion on that matter? Seeing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Okay. So from this step forward, we go back to the discussion with regard to those sections held. We have several that were held by somebody that is not here at the meeting. We got several that are held. I guess the best way to do is to get started on that, and when we get to those items that were held by others, I would like to actually table those for the next meeting.
Table the ones that,
Were held by a committee member that had emailed in, that we just had held. So from a process standpoint, we've talked quickly about process. I think in everybody's, time is important to everybody, especially in the summertime. It'd be nice to, like I said, we're kind of digging into the things that need the specific attention. We're able to put aside all parts of the act that our committee won't be looking at any longer going forward. I guess I would offer up for the committee any other items related to procedure and process they'd like to be
Well,
considered.
I think in discussing the items that were held, it's fine for someone to hold something, but if there's going to be changes made, there has to be some kind of substantial reason for making a change.
Mhm.
Either because we received comments from present or former selectmen, comments from Blythe, or some other source that is a credible source. So I don't think I think we have to have a compelling reason to make a change.
There has to be facts to support it, I
Right,
think is what
correct.
you're saying.
Yeah.
compelling reasons and facts to make the change. I would agree that that would be the course of action.
Okay.
Because,
For example, Section 7, just as a simple example, the compelling reason for changing Section 7 is we were not in the position that we were, 10 years ago. So that's a reason for making that change.
That was in there just for the interim.
Right.
There was no need to.
So we all received Blythe's letter, right? Everybody's read it. I assume that it was important for her to be here, it was beneficial. And I
Absolutely.
actually found that, I think really the last paragraph, actually the last line, is the most insightful, is everything that she shared or said to us, and I think I've mentioned it before. The reality is that this act was presented by the then Board of Selectmen because of perhaps their perception of what the current board and future boards' ability to commit to be full-time selectmen, which prior selectmen were, that wasn't necessarily there anymore. And Blythe properly basically asked, I think, that the town should consider whether its form of government with multiple elected boards and open town meeting makes sense as well. And, I think this current process works. We've heard from the selectmen who this person reports to. But again, if you're talking about taking away delineated responsibilities that are given to the town manager, you better have a board of selectmen I'm not sure that any other elected board would be appropriate to assume these responsibilities, and certainly not an appointed board. These are two important responsibilities. So either there's a mayor who will be responsible, you smirk, but the reality is either there's a mayor that will, appoint or acquire people with talents in all aspects of town government, or I think this works sufficiently. I think Blythe also hit it, that her perception is that there are certain people in the community who came forward and had negative interaction with her. And I think she's right in what she wrote in this letter, that the reality is when you lead, when you manage, you're not going to make everybody happy. So I don't know what the board members feel, but I think there are some very limited aspects that maybe we could change, but I don't think, I went over the petition, and I think the petition, wow. So, not necessarily wow in a good way. So, that's my feeling.
So, like you said, I think one of the things that's been obvious from the beginning of this committee is that I don't think anybody doesn't value the town manager position in this government, in this community. So I don't think that's, to your point, I think it's very valid. I don't think that's the issue at hand at all. So if you do go starting with the first two ones that we were talked about, which was line 26 and 27, we can start the discussion there. There's something that it's taken a while for me, and it took from one of the citizens that emailed in some, that's also on the personnel board, to realize that that was on that first section, that I line had to do with what appears to be some language between the act and our personnel bylaws that probably don't align specifically. So, and I'm not sure if those things are things that you change in the act or you change in the bylaws. One of the first things is on line 27. It refers to a subsection K of section 4.
That's a mistake.
Many of the responsibilities,
So that's a mistake. I mean, Steve, I agree with you. That's just a clear mistake.
Yeah.
It's an editorial mistake. It should have said 4A. Is everybody in the committee believe that would be something that it should have said? But those two are very important lines in this act. It's got an error in it. So, there's an example of that. And I think from our correspondence from one of the other citizens who gave us feedback on that, had made references to things like that.
So can we agree that on line 27, subsection K should be changed to subsection A?
I think that's a good recommendation. I think I will make that in the form of a motion. A motion as opposed to a motion.
I will second that.
Moved and seconded.
So we moved and seconded that. Any further discussion about that? Debbie, I'd like to have your feedback or input, your expertise from the personnel board.
I think with every change that we, as a committee, agree to make, we need to provide a
recommend.
Recommend, right.
Yeah, all right.
Every change we recommend, we need to provide the rationale. So in this case, the rationale is we're just correcting a typographical error.
Typographical error, correct.
And that's changing K to A.
You're right.
Glenn has something to,
Glenn doesn't
Yes,
get to
sir.
talk, no.
well, is he,
To assist the listening audience, it'd be appropriate to read the line that you're going to change so that they have some idea what you're talking about.
Okay, thank you.
Otherwise, it's a big mystery.
right, nobody knows. Yeah.
Appreciate that. So the committee has started to look at the specific held lines. The line that we're looking at in the Act, Chapter 391 of the Act of 2008, Section 2, subsection A. It says hiring, firing, and disciplining employees under the jurisdiction of the board pursuant to subsection K of Section 4. So,
We're changing that to A.
so that's a simple edit.
Did we vote?
There's a motion on the table, seconded.
So the motion seconded. Any other further discussion on the matter? Seeing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Numbers 36 through 43. I held those specific items going back to a couple of our meetings that we've had. With the first meeting with the first selectman, which was Selectman Doherty, and then the second one, which was former selectmen's Brochu and Picard, and with Selectman Chairman Fleming. This was a discussion about, it's been brought up a couple times, and I do believe in reading Blythe's letter that was also an item that was brought up in the sense with the act that I think there's lots of confusion at times with the Town Managers Act and the town manager role about who reports to who in the org chart and so on and so forth. And former Selectman Picard actually had made mention in his comments to the committee that that's one of the sections that if he would look at, he would consider changing that. So, and I think it has to do with, like you said, a lot of times there's things that are not very clear about who reports to who employs and people, who hires and fires, and so on and so forth. So that's the reason that I had put that hold up onto that section, was just have some committee discussion about that item. And going back to the comments from the former manager and the former selectman about that. And this also goes into the fact of our community's gone through, since we put a manager in place, we've gone through one successful, one failed attempt of changing boards from elected to appointed. So,
I think the comment that Blythe made was very accurate. It's clear in the act who reports to who. What's not clear is in the community who reports to who. So I don't know that that's necessarily a problem with the act. It's a problem of making sure that everyone in the community understands what the act says.
Well, Steve, it's also government, because that also existed when the selectmen were responsible for these responsibilities.
It's no different.
And somebody might call and say, some Board of Health issue or something like that. So, again, it's probably more reflective of the community's
Understanding.
Because it's not-
I don't want to use the word ignorance, but unawareness of town government, and that the selectmen don't run the entire town.
This is no different than when, before we had a town manager. It's exactly the same.
Right.
Misunderstanding of what
Right.
the duties were and who
So people
were under.
have to understand that the Board of Health and the library trustees are independent entities within the town. They don't report to the Board of Selectmen, they don't report to the town manager.
Maybe the proper question to give to the community at some point, just for direction or informational purpose for the town leaders, is do they want a centralized government that is responsible for running all aspects of the community, or do they want independently elected boards as we have now?
Which is a much greater question than what we're charged with.
But is it the case that for a Board of Health, the state requires that board be elected separate?
No,
Is that a choice?
That's
It's supposed to be an agent, but not an independently elected board.
It doesn't have to be, for example, in the case of the Board of Health, Grafton is appointed by the Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
Now, they get their authority from the state. Their enforcement regulations are from the state. In the case of Milford, they have an elected board. Generally speaking, the elected boards, in the case of Board of Health, works a lot better than the appointed boards. At least that's what experience shows Grafton versus Milford.
And
Well,
is
communities
it,
that have a mayoral system like Worcester or Boston have
That's a different-
professional services or whatever, and they're delineated the responsibility.
Right.
and I'm assuming, is it the same for the library trustees?
Absolutely, that's exactly the case. Each town chooses what they want to do. Right. In our case, we chose that the town clerk was appointed by the Board of Selectmen when we made that decision some time ago, which now she's appointed by the Board of Selectmen as opposed to elected. So you can make those changes along the way.
So I guess the question is what are those boards and committees? Because it's not just those three, I think there's a few more out there.
No, there's a
And I think
treasurer
we've had a couple
collector.
of them, with treasurer
Treasurer
collector,
collector and assessors.
cemetery commission.
The trustees, the trustees of the, we have a set of trustees that handle all the
Pristine funds.
pristine funds and that, the board of trustees, with the exception of the selectmen's, one of the trustees, one of the funds. And I think that's,
So one possible way that we could make a recommendation with regard to these lines in the act is to recommend to the Board of Selectmen that they put an article on a warrant for some future town meeting asking the specific question, does the town want to have elected, list them and say, do we want these boards to continue to be elected, or do we want them to be appointed?
in part, that question was asked some time ago when we asked the question about the town treasurer collector.
Collector, right.
And
Right.
But Al, you know what? Now the community has the experience of what was passed several years ago.
Yes.
And maybe the vast majority or a majority aren't satisfied. And if they're not, again, it seems to me the question becomes, you want a person who's responsible for acquiring the talent.
That would be
You
a
want to keep
question.
government the way
That
it
would
is.
be, I think that would be a good forum for the selectmen to explain,
To discuss it now.
okay, and say, look, this is how our government currently works. Do you want to keep it that way or not? And if the answer is yes, then this is fine the way it is. If the answer is no, we want to change it, this may still be fine.
I'm going to guess, Steve, that the 250 or 80 sometimes, but whatever it is, people that show up for the annual meetings or the special meetings understand that it's really
People who are not, don't show
informing
up.
those that don't participate.
But it would be that would be a separate discussion, which may be a recommendation we make that they put it on the table for discussion again, as if nothing else, as a
An education.
an educational discussion. I mean, that may be.
I'd even take it one little step further, because actually you think about what's been talked about, Selectman Fleming, Chairman Fleming had brought up about a finance coordinator, as a potential new position. So how does that fit in with an elected treasurer collector?
Actually, there was at one time, Gene Warren, remember, we had a finance manager that was, and then that was changed. I think that was 23 years ago or something like that. You remember that, Steve?
What was it?
Yeah.
What was the person's name?
Gene Warren, when she was selectman, that they put together a group and recommended a finance, and I don't know exactly what the title was. It was put in but not funded, and then it died a quiet death. But that was something that happened 25 years ago.
I think my point to bring it up is, like I said, we started off this meeting and Liz Blythe had recommended looking at MMA as a reference point for stuff. We started that first meeting, I put out a few things that just came off of the reference files for town manager governments, the Groton, West Newbury. And those are examples of where those acts, when they were written, unlike ours, were a little more inclusive about the bigger picture of government. So that was, I guess, my key point to why putting a line on that is, does it make sense for the selectmen to consider that?
Well, that could be a recommendation that they, as Steve said, put it on the town meeting warrant sometime to have for no other reason, an educational reason to explain to people how it works right now, and if they wanted to make a change to it.
I don't know if they even have to have it on the warrant. I think that it could be something that can be part of what they're considering. I mean, I know I went looking actually in preparation of this meeting, looking for for any kind of medium or long-term goals and objectives related to these items, and I couldn't find anything specifically. So,
But we have just talked about having line 36 to line 43.
yeah.
And we were discussing the fact that none of this is necessarily we want to change. The fact is, it's not the town, it's the people who don't understand this
Yeah.
particular line.
Well, I think it's a little mix of a couple of things. I think, like I said, we're wandering into a point where it could be a mix of items. I mean, we do have elected assessors that we have been filling by appointment, I think, like, in the last 2 cycles.
I think Mr. Picard, when he mentioned that, he was talking, if I remember correctly, he was talking about employees of these departments who aren't under the jurisdiction of the Board of Selectmen or the town manager in this case. You know, if they call snow day, if the town manager calls a snow day, well, I work for the library. Does that include me? I don't work for the town manager. So I thought that's what he was talking about, was confusion internally in the town with employees who don't report to the town manager and employees that do. If anybody else remembers that, I don't know, but that's how I remembered
I
it.
do recall that as one of the points, too.
That was one of the points he said.
But I
We have
think
people that report to many different.
We have the Board of Health. The Board of Health, the members of the Board of Health do not report to the Board of Selectmen. But our employees,
Yes, exactly.
Quasar.
That's what he was talking about. Correct.
they get the insurance, they get all town benefits from the selectmen.
Right.
So essentially, they are employees of the town.
The Board of Health's position is that they follow the same rules and regulations as all other,
Right.
all other employees.
Right. It should be in the policies and procedures manual. If the town manager calls a snow day,
Then
that
they-
includes everybody.
Which is
Just
not-
as,
which
just
is-
an example.
Right, which would not be a part of the.
Part of-
Correct, it wouldn't be here.
Wouldn't be
Correct.
here, it would be
Right.
policies and procedures. And I
Right.
believe I believe one of the things that wife said is that was cleared up.
started, well,
Yeah.
at least for the snow days, right?
Right, snow days
Yeah,
was
yes,
specifically
yes.
referenced in the,
Right.
which makes sense.
So that could be another recommendation that we make is for
Make sure
the,
that's cleared up.
for the selectmen to clarify how employees of elected boards, you know, what rules and policies are they supposed to follow? And I'm assuming it would be the same as everybody else.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Just make that
We
clear.
just need to make it clear.
And then-
Right.
Yeah.
Which is, as you point out, is not really not part of this.
Right.
It's a policy, that's a policies thing, so we make that recommendation.
So it sounds like potentially there are 2 recommendations that come out of this discussion. One is to recommend to the selectmen that either at some appropriate venue of their choosing, they have a conversation to help explain to the citizens that elected boards A, B, C, D, E do not report to either the selectmen or the town manager. Number
Number
one.
one.
And number 2, that any employees of those boards are required by a policy or a bylaw, whatever is the appropriate thing.
Policy would be a policy.
Policy, to follow the same policies as,
Right.
you know, employees that do report to the town manager.
The purpose is to educate or inform as many citizens as possible,
possible,
correct? Okay, so I think the discussion we had 2 months ago, and I think I might have made the suggestion, is that the selectmen, once a month, request some portion, again, it's a for-profit entity, the town crier, it goes to every home in this community. So it's a great advertising resource for anybody, but it's also a great informational resource. And that can be accomplished more effectively than having a speech given at a town meeting. And if it's only an informational meeting, my God, I'd be surprised if more than 50 people showed up. So that's the reality of it. the selectmen can accomplish this by writing a letter, or honestly, paying for an insert in that publication, and explaining to people, maybe give some insight into this petition and whatever decision, whatever their position is on it. Again, I hate to be a negative Ned, but the reality is going to be that a large portion of the population is still not going to educate itself. We're talking about, geez, everybody should know how this government runs. A lot of people leave in the morning, come back at night, and are thankful they can rest their head in their pillow.
Yeah.
And again, that's fine. I know I was like that for a period of time when I first moved here before I got involved. Not everybody can. Everybody's level of involvement is by their circumstances in life. But I don't think the meeting is necessarily it. I think maybe using the greatest resource we have in the community, because not everybody watches the TV station that we have, is the town crier. And whether it's an insert to the public or maybe 300 words or 500 words that the publication gives to selectmen, that'd be a way to achieve it much more efficiently. But we only recommend that.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right, that's right.
But
I think the other thing that I'd like to bring up is, like I said, a discussion point is, if they do have a concern or thought of doing any changes, that this is one of the areas that this committee, I would make a recommendation that they would act on that and not.
Dan, I thought that the selectmen, when they're here, were going to do that. The last couple of publications, there's been nothing. So whoever the chairman is, he hasn't followed through with it. I doubt there's been any discussion amongst the board, but that would be a great resource for the community if monthly they did something in the publication. Or even handouts here in town, at the police station, at the fire station. The citizens who are interested can go and pick up and understand what's going on in government, as opposed to sitting, even though you're right, I know you're thinking that the internet is right there. How much easier is it than going to the internet and seeing everything?
Even in this day, the internet's being replaced with social media, where the internet reaches out and touches you, and you don't go looking for it as much. So, a lot going on change-wise. So like I said, I think that there's right from go some of the feedback we've gotten from citizens, a few quick comments, is not understanding how that is, how it works.
Well, I'd like to make a motion to accept as written line 36 through 43.
I'll second that motion.
I have a motion on the floor to leave those lines as written.
I'd like just to make a friendly amendment and say, in addition, the committee recommends that the Board of Selectmen educate the town through whatever means they think is appropriate as to the fact that elected boards do not report to the town manager currently, and number two, that we recommend that employees of those boards, the selectmen should make it clear that they are required to follow the same policies as other town employees.
I will accept that amendment to my motion as
Friendly amendment.
friendly amendment to the,
Or unfriendly, which is not friendly.
it's friendly amendment.
Any further discussion on that? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nothing? Motion carries unanimously. 48, 49, and 50. I'm going to read the complete sentence that's in between those three. It says, "The manager shall not serve in elected office in the town's government for at least 12 months before his appointment."
How was that period of time determined? I'm just curious. Why was it considered that 12 months somehow was kosher, for lack of a better word, but that the prior period of time, I think it was 60 days, but whoever's on the personnel board, why was it necessary?
It's
Because
statutory, I think.
I disagree with one thing Blythe said in her letter. She either stated or implied that in a community this size, you're not going to find qualified people to be a town manager. And respectfully, I disagree with that, because I think that there have been past selectmen and/or Board of Health members who I think were very, very capable, intelligent, and worldly, and had great social skills, and were very capable. So why can anybody tell me it's 12 months as opposed to 60 days?
I think it's statutory that you cannot be employed by the town and then appointed to or hired for a paid position until after 12 months.
When did that happen? Because it used to be in the town, when I became a selectman, a prior selectman became an employee in a period of time. I know it wasn't a year, and he did a fabulous job. I'm a big fan of his, but
No, but there's statutorily, there is a 12-month regulation, and the reason why I know about that is because that occurred some years back with...
I think it's arbitrary, Al. If you can tell me the statute, I'll certainly take a look at it.
Well, I would say that it is existent, and you can chase it. How that easy?
I'll add a little more to the discussion point, is if you look at some of the more contemporary, which is some town manager acts that we've been able to pull from those examples, from those resources that were mentioned, that Blythe had brought up, is two things. Is it doesn't appear that the 12-month is a set number. It's not a magical number. I suspect that there's some kind of number that has to be for the purposes of conflict of interest. One of the things that's interesting too is several of those other acts only say that you should not be on the Board of Selectmen. So then an executive,
I think
that
was-
executive authority or
is that-
role.
That was the original reason, right,
Yeah.
Richard? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it didn't want to appear that the selectmen were creating this position and then having one of the selectmen take it.
Yeah.
It was for that. So I think,
But it had nothing to do with his qualifications.
yeah, right.
But
It
to,
was just for appearances and to make it appear that the selectmen weren't acting, you know, in the interest of the town, not in anyone.
I think it's an ethics question.
um,
I think that's what it is. It's ethics.
Ethics?
well, like I said, it says elected office, which we just talked about in our last set of discussion points, that there's quite a few elected positions, and I would agree completely with Mr. Rosenfield with this point, is that I did take that same exact understanding of that, and that actually was very disappointing to say that we're not going to have a town government, that we're not going to be able to have and develop our own talent within our own town government to lead us in the future, that when we have people that would come into the community, whether they serve 3, 6, 9, whatever the number of years in successive contracts, that we would have to start over and go outside the community every time for a future leader and manager of the community. So, I mean, there's clearly some examples and some of the information we've pulled up and have looked at as a group and have brought forward to the committee as a group that shows that there probably is some kind of time limit that's appropriate from a standpoint of being ethical.
Well, one of the things that we can do is we can ask town council to give us a recommendation on what would be an appropriate time. If it's not 12 months, maybe they can find out what would be an appropriate, if there even is any.
I think, as I recall, I think it comes out of all of us who took the ethics questionnaire. I think that's where it came from the ethics.
Okay.
I think that's where it came from, number one. And number two, some years back, there was a question about how the assistant to the Board of Selectmen was put in place. So that may be why it was put in for 12 months too. Anyway, that being said, 12 months could be arbitrary and capriciously.
So I have found that there is a State Ethics Commission opinion that indicates that there is a reference cooling off period for selectmen of communities 10,000 persons or less. And that's what they recommend It's after bribes and gifts and gratuities. Restrictions after you leave government service, section 18. Then it says, in addition, there is a one-year cooling off period before you may personally appear before the board, telephone right. This is the closest I can find, a town agency. And with matters that are under your responsibility for 2 years prior to government, even if you didn't participate in it. But I have not been able to find anything that,
Any law.
that says a town manager, but I guess there's got to be a conflict somewhere. Someone thought, maybe that's the cooling off period, maybe they thought somehow there'd be compliance with it.
Well, that also made an example, because you said that was opinion was specific to Board of Selectmen. So that may be also why we're seeing that Board of Selectmen being referenced in other acts only and not any elected position.
Well, I'm not sure that 12 months isn't, it is something you'd want to change. I think 12 months is a reasonable amount of time.
You know, that'd be a real shame, because honestly, I know that he's not interested. But I think that, for example, Selectman Fleming, you know, at an appropriate time, if he was ever interested, would be very qualified. I think that Selectman Bates was an amazing individual, and I hear some people think ran the town even when there was a selectman's office. But again,
Perception.
he was amazing, and there were never any issues that our sister community Mendon had, for example, and that was a lawyer who was running their town for a while. So, and I know that there are others who have served, who have the social skills and the analytical and all aspects that can do it, from the town warrant to dealing with personnel issues. So I guess if we can find out, I'd like to know really what is the period of time that a selectman has to stay out, or Board of Health, you know, it could be many other offices, or treasurer. Our current treasurer, I think, is a really phenomenal individual with many talents. So I think we are taking the pool of interested, qualified candidates and shrinking it even more by saying that 1 year. But that's just my thought.
So why don't we, so I'll make a motion that we request town council give us an opinion.
Need the Board of Selectmen to
Or request
seek.
the Board of Selectmen to, right.
Actually, yeah, right. See,
Seek town council input on whether this 12 months is a real
legal
legal
restriction.
restriction or it's arbitrary.
Arbitrary
Any
provision.
elected compensated, now everybody's compensated who's elected, but
Yeah.
a town official, is there a cooling off period before they can be employed by the town in a non-elected position?
Well, statutorily, you can only, if you have, you can be in several elected positions, but you can only get paid for one.
Correct.
Right.
Can't do.
That's a reason.
All right, but I don't think that's what we're asking.
No, we're not.
No, I don't think you said, I know personally, I'm not, the timeline of 12 months seems appropriate to me. I look at this and I look at any elected office, and I think you bring up a very valid point about it does narrow the pool down. It almost excludes probably some of the people that would
Town.
be the people that would fill it from an internal standpoint.
I will
So I'd
second
make
that
a-
motion.
I will make a friendly amendment that we clarify to your motion that be specific about Board of Selectmen.
No, I think it's any
Any
elected
elected,
Any elected.
office.
any elected office.
You can say, including the Board of Selectmen, I mean, if you want, if you're, but
The question
Well, I
is
guess
whether,
the question is, like I said, I saw from other, looking at the two of the town manager acts, they specifically say, you shall not serve in the Board of Selectmen. I believe the one that is in West Newbury says 18 months, actually, ironically.
Because they're the appointing authority.
Right.
Yeah.
So that would make
But
sense.
but it doesn't say that, it doesn't exclude anybody else from other elected
No.
offices, is what I'm.
well, treasurer, for example, again, I think he's a very qualified, amazing individual.
So essentially what they're
He's an
doing is
employee, so that this says he's not qualified.
for 12 months. So I think a valid point is that they're trying to eliminate the Board of Selectmen, who is the hiring authority, to move them out of the thing.
It has to be elected. The words only say elected.
Which
Oh,
would
so the
be,
accountant.
if you're an
Correct.
elected official.
If he was appointed, he would not be
Right.
excluded.
I think that what it does is it takes, if you say elected official, that takes some of the politics out of, that puts politics into the appointment. That's why they say, I think that's why elected officials in there, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, but a question from council is the way to go.
They said that.
They've got to make some money too.
So I think that's an excellent point to bring forward and to ask for clarification.
So you made that motion, right, Steve? No,
I second it.
Okay, well then I'll second, so.
Any further discussion on this point? So this item, we have an action to seek, or through the Board of Selectmen, some input about that specific language.
From 45 to 40, to 50.
48 to 50.
And it's that
Yeah.
specific sentence.
Yeah.
I will go back and say if anybody else thinks that if I have misunderstood. I don't think so. I took the full sentence that's in those.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Very good. Seeing any further discussion?
Nope.
Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? No. Motion carries unanimously. Okay. 63
73.
through 73.
I held this mostly because of line 66 to 70.
66 to 70.
So really, the 15 days is where I'm focused. The previous town manager expressed that that was too long a period of time. My experience is that I agree with the previous town manager, and I think we should try to get the Board of Selectmen to schedule a meeting much faster than 15 days.
Actually, the Board of Selectmen can shorten that time if it is declared an emergency.
48 hours, I think.
No, 48 hours is if it's posted. If it's an emergency, they can have a meeting instantaneously, I believe. Can
Right.
you remember, Alan? Board of Selectmen can, if there's an emergency, Board of Selectmen can have a meeting without a quick, the 48-hour post? I think that's a yes, he remembers that.
Right, but I would like the Board of Selectmen not to have that choice, I guess. I would give the town manager that ability to schedule something faster.
Well, yeah, the town manager should be able to ask. The dilemma is, if the town manager should ask the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Selectmen can elect or determine that they can establish an emergency meeting and they can take care of it instantaneously.
Yeah, they can do
So
that,
This is the minimum.
but they can also choose not to do that.
That's
So
correct.
that's what I'm
a
saying.
choi- Well, that's a
Right.
choice they have.
Well, not if we change it.
Ah,
So,
So I think it should be much shorter than 15 days. It's too long to deal with an employee issue. I think we've had employee issues, and the 15 days is just, and the previous town manager expressed that.
I think I'll add up some items. I had looked at that section too, and looking back at other town managers' acts from the references, it seems to be a pretty standard set of, a 15 or 20-day notice. This
Right.
language seems pretty common. You know,
I
almost
wouldn't
every
doubt
town
it.
manager act I can get my hands on, and through the MMA Resource Library.
Well, I guess I'd ask that we get a ruling, a council ruling as to whether we can change the 15 days, and maybe cut it to 7.
Deb, her other comment was on when the selectmen finally do meet, whether it's 15 days or whatever.
2 days, yeah.
Can they overrule the town manager without a reason?
that was,
Right.
that was.
That was her other point.
Yes, that was her other point. I don't know where that's addressed, though.
It doesn't appear to be addressed in here at all.
It's not in this
I
section.
think what she
A.
was suggesting is the only reason that the selectmen should be overriding an appointment, not a dismissal,
Right, not a
but
discipline.
an appointment would be based on lack of disagreement over qualifications.
Right.
Right,
But as opposed to saying, well, we just don't like the color shirt you're wearing today.
yeah, just wants to take the politics out of it,
Yeah,
make it just qualifications.
yeah. But that only applies to appointments. It doesn't-
Hiring,
Now this is hiring and firing.
Hiring.
hiring and firing, right, hiring. No.
Right. We've given the position the power to discipline, but not really, because the Board of Selectmen can do it. That's the thing. Either take it out and say, look, it's the Board of Selectmen who make the decision, and take the town manager out of it.
Yeah, A is
Or-
purely disciplinary issues.
You know, it's not true. He or she does not have, I mean, yes, it follows it, but she did not have that power.
And-
It's the Board of Selectmen who really have power.
Yeah, I think this goes into the issue of, and I'd like to have your opinion as somebody who's served on personnel board. There's a whole process that, you know, in probably almost most instances, there's a whole process that should have, if it's been something that's a recurrent issue,
Right.
it shouldn't be a sudden thing. So this
Right.
15 days is irrelevant, which is probably covering, you know, most situations and
You would
cases
hope.
with employees.
You would
It's
hope.
interesting, because the issue, the question really is, who is the hiring authority?
The Board of Selectmen.
Board of Selectmen. So, in point of fact, if the Board of Selectmen is the hiring authority, then the town manager on disciplinary actions really can only should only make recommendations to the hiring authority, unless the town manager is given the authority, the hiring becomes the hiring authority, and then the issue is a different question.
But I think the point that Blythe raised was, what if it's a safety issue?
I think she had raised in her point, I can answer this, and I think we talked about it, and she said yes to that, is she does have the authority to administratively suspend somebody with pay, and that's it. I mean, that's sort of like the town's default,
Right.
is I can
Right.
immediately suspend you with pay
Right.
and put you on the sidelines
And
until we
then
sort the
the- then
And then
process
the
out.
Board of Selectmen can take
Yeah.
action
In 15 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
which now, that covers that span of time, that 15 days.
So I'm gonna kind of complicate this a little bit, but of course, the hiring authorities, as you guys have just brought up, are spread out over a lot of the boards and commissions. So it can get sticky if you get into a board or commission that's short people on. So, I mean, when they have that hiring authority, which is ours is written,
What happens if a library employee gets into an argument with another library employee?
The town manager, because they have to follow personnel rules, acts as a personnel coordinator, can take action. I would.
And then what happens after that?
After that,
The Board of
there's
Selectmen,
seven- no, the
would be the
board-
library trustees,
The
right?
library trustees are the hiring authority, so the hiring authority then would assume that.
This
Because
is-
we always fall back on the hiring authority.
this is where it does get complicated, because technically, those boards and commissions, you know, you have supervisory authority, and I think that's where,
Well, I don't think you want to change that, really.
no, I'm not, I'm just saying the point is I think there's some complexity there, again, to the way that this is
The
structured.
library, though, is a little, well, maybe it's a little bit different, because there's a manager,
There's library director, yes.
director, right? Board of Health, I mean, it's a
the
board.
board.
Board of
it's
Health
not-
as a chairman.
as a chairman, right? So is it the case where a Board of Health employee, the town manager could suspend them with pay, and then the Board of
Right.
Health would have to meet and take action?
Well, look what had happened, the
Then-
town
then-
manager would call the chairman and say, got this problem, we have 2 employees that are going at it, or whatever the issue is. And then it would be suspended, it could be suspended with pay.
But in the case of the library, why wouldn't the library director be the person who deals with the issue rather than?
The library manager, the director of the library could call the town manager up and say, Joe and Sally got in a fight and I suspended them with pay. Now the town manager could say, gee, that's diametrically opposed to the personnel policies, or the town manager could say, okay, I support that position. See,
But it's not the town manager's job to actually make the decision?
no, I don't think so.
Actually, it says the town manager is supposed to consult with the chairman of the personnel board. So there's even that in there. So I think when I started looking at this, I spent a lot of time going around, and I didn't really come up with the most ideal situation, how this should
Right.
play out. And I think we could spend a lot of time, which I
Yeah.
don't think any of us want to do tonight,
Yeah.
saying this one needs some work. This one needs a little more.
It may, I don't know.
I
We might need
personally
to talk it out.
would want to table this one and maybe like I said, we had another personnel board member who's a citizen had sent us an email about that. I think that you maybe can request.
Do you want to hold this one for discussion, further
I want to
discussion?
table this one for discussion for the next
And
meeting.
can we also ask, Deb, can we ask Deb and the personnel board to make a recommendation?
Yeah, I'm sure Dan can make that request of the personnel board.
Okay.
So what lines are you tabling? All
6 to
60?
73.
Oh, section
63,
A, yeah.
63 to 73.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, section A.
Just for procedurally, we technically table 48 and 50, 48 through 52 because, again, we're asking for.
Well, we asked for legal opinion, there we
Yeah.
taking action. This one we're just tabling.
So we're tabling?
So we're also tabling 48 through 50.
Yeah, we're gonna ask for legal
Right.
Yep.
opinion there, and
I think it's the
63 for
same.
73. I guess what we want to do is ask the personnel board for recommendation.
Yeah.
So we'll say that.
So the next lines held are 108 through 112.
Yeah, it's kind of a related issue, I think, really. Who administers the policies of the town, the personnel bylaws?
That's a very good point, Deb.
That's all.
And
It's
I
just
went back to
related.
look at our mission statement, which we had gone out of our way to narrow it. And we talk about, efficient, and I think this is an example where, I don't know if anybody wants a further discussion to just table that along with the
Yeah.
other lines that we just done.
Well, essentially, I mean, relatively speaking, the town manager is assigned to manage the employees of the town that report directly to the Board of Selectmen. And the Personnel Board is appointed by the Board of Selectmen to regulate and to take a look at the personnel regulations. So in point of fact, that all wraps into the responsibilities of the Board of Selectmen. I mean, if you look at from a organizational standpoint, the Board of Selectmen are the guys in charge.
But the difference, I don't know, the difference that I see is personnel board is responsible for creating policies and procedures. And the town manager or the board of selectmen, they're synonymous, is responsible for implementing those policies and procedures. Is that not accurate?
Well, I have a question first, if I can. Part of the displeasure has been that with the town managers, that it's not somebody elected by the community. So they feel like it's not their person running the town. The personnel board, isn't that an appointed authority?
Appointed by the Board of
So
Selectmen.
are you thinking of giving this appointed authority some type of
No.
significant input
No.
into
No.
discipline?
All I'm saying is, the way
I
I
just wanna make
understand
sure.
No, no.
the division of responsibility is, we have one group, the personnel board, that creates policies and procedures for all town employees.
Right?
And we have another group,
Actually,
either the selectmen or the town manager.
no, the personnel
that
personnel bylaws are voted on by the governing body.
Right, the town meeting.
Right, so.
The town meeting, so the personnel board neither creates policies,
They recommend.
they recommend, or they enforce the bylaws, but they don't make
Well,
policies.
that's where I'm not clear.
Yeah, the
Because-
personnel board makes no policies.
But they recommend.
They can recommend to the Board of Selectmen and to the governing body to make changes, which we have over the years.
Okay, and once those changes are
Then-
in place, then
They
selectmen, right,
have to enforce them.
have to enforce them.
Correct.
No, because isn't it sometimes approved by the community?
Well, no, what I'm saying is the bylaw, the personnel bylaw is voted on and changed by the governing body, which is the people that show up at town meeting.
Right.
So if I want to make a bylaw that says that you have to wear a white shirt every day, if the governing body, it puts before the governing body as a warrant article, the governing body votes on it and says, yeah, I think that's right. So then from that point forward, everybody has to wear a white shirt to work.
Right, so I think, again, what Steve is asking, or what the reality is, the Personnel Board is appointed by the Board of Selectmen. Again, I guess we'd have to take a look and see whether this changes under the Town Act. Generally, it would be probably the town manager's responsibility if she has a question or he has a question about personnel issues and wants input from the personnel board, and if there are changes recommended, it would then be up to the town manager to present it for the community's consideration to change the bylaws.
To the selectmen to put it on a warrant to be questioned at the.
Or citizens can do it themselves.
Citizens can make a citizen's position if they petition to have enough.
But
I agree with you.
the important distinction that I'm trying to understand is the personnel board proposes, the town manager enforces,
Implements.
Yes.
implements. Is that not correct, Ed?
No, not really. I don't,
Yes, it says so right on line 110 to 111. It says, "The responsibility shall include the enforcement of personal policies, rules, and regulations." And
Yes,
going
but the
on.
Board of
Managers
Selectmen
can
can
personal-
overrule that, though. So really, the town manager doesn't have the ultimate power, the Board of Selectmen have the ultimate
if the
power.
Board of Selectmen determine that it's outside the bylaws, then it would be a question that would be open for debate.
What if it's inside the bylaws?
If it's inside, within the boundaries of the
You know what?
bylaw.
I don't agree with you, and I think by the contract and by the act, if you start at 108, it says, "The town manager is responsible for the administration of personnel and personnel matters."
Including
personnel bylaws.
including the personnel bylaw.
Right. So as far as I'm concerned, my reading of this, the plain language is that the town manager takes the role of the Board of Selectmen when you served, Mr. Holman, and you used to enforce those.
No,
Now it's the town manager.
No, I see I see the point you're making. I see the
So
point.
there's no way, they'd be in breach of contract if they tried to take it back, in my opinion,
Or the
from the town
administration.
manager. Again, this is just an additional
If they
example
took the including out.
of the selectmen feeling that they didn't want to run day-to-day operations, and that was left to a professional manager. That's why we have a town manager.
No, I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying.
Just for discussion points for the group, if you go back and look at some of our feedback, including the past town manager, I believe Selectman Fleming has also mentioned it, that this is one of the areas where the community talks about and debates about a need and a change and something different. So I kind of will go back to, and I think because we got a lot of discussion, I'd like to table this one and kind of tie it back to the first ones we did, because I think there's a lot of interrelationships and complexity to it. I don't think it necessarily means we would make a recommendation to change, but I think it does get into the specifics of
Well,
it.
I do see what your point is, Alan, and I would say that if we took out, if we were to take out after administration of, that we took personnel and personnel matters including, and we just said administration of the personnel bylaws, that would then bring it back to a point where the.
You know, Al, I know you're very experienced in business and in management, and it just seems to me, before you would even recommend that, you'd listen to the manager who now has that responsibility. And the selectmen, I didn't hear that, not that we're making a decision tonight,
No,
but the
right.
selectmen that we met and came here and spoke on a public record, they didn't say they wanted that task or that responsibility.
Okay, no, I understand
And
what
if
you're saying.
anything, I've talked with recent retired selectmen who didn't want the delegation of that responsibility. So I know I'm like a broken record. You better start electing leaders of the community then who want the responsibility and are willing to commit to what the old school selectmen did. That's the reality of this. And the reason that we have the town manager with this much responsibility is because the leaders of the community, the elected leaders, don't want, for whatever reasons, the day-to-day operation. And although I think a lot of the selectmen were capable managers, I can imagine that the town managers that are retained are much more qualified in many more aspects than a majority of the selectmen who have served, not all.
No, I can see that point out.
The town manager can act right now. A selectman has to wait till there's a meeting.
That's true. That's
That is
true.
one of the reasons that we have
Good
this.
point.
Well, interestingly enough, I want to go back to the point is in probably 99% of the instances, there should be a process in which a lot of things that should have already gone through, and we shouldn't be talking about the level we're here. And I can tell you from an example, that's been a complaint in the department I belong in. There was a time when the grievance process was not followed by the personnel bylaws. So,
There's a clear, well, there isn't a clear grievance policy. The grievance policy contradicts itself within the policy.
That's a personnel policy
However,
question.
right, there is a clause in the personnel bylaws about grievances. We are not following it.
Chairman, I'm just going to ask for you, Deb, would you please make sure what Dan just said, he felt the issue was, that that's in the record of what's being discussed at the
I
meeting
think
today?
Deborah just summarized exactly what's going on.
So that's an issue really that probably refers back to the personnel bylaw, that maybe a change is required to clarify, to clear up that issue.
Well, and does the town manager enforce the personnel bylaws or not?
Well,
If the town manager enforces the personnel bylaws, then the town manager should be able to do the grievance process and follow it according to the bylaws. But if the town manager is not allowed to do that,
So I think there's
a problem there.
When there were
That's all.
rules I've found in my life, I used to think rules were black and white, just a short regression. When I was about 19, a family friend came over, and I wanted to be a police officer at the time. This is a true story. They asked me if my mother had committed a moving violation, would I give my mother a ticket? And I said, I sure as heck would. Okay, so honestly, now, being a 60-year-old as opposed to a 19-year-old, things are a lot more gray in my life now than they were in years past. So there's discretion in everything. There's discretion in a judge, for example. You say the law is black and white. Well, it isn't. Life is gray, and a great judge, a good judge, interprets the facts with what the law and then renders a decision. That's what we ask of our town manager. So that's why there's chocolate ice cream and vanilla ice cream. Two people can have a difference of opinion in what the outcome should be.
But
So
who
you can't
enforces
say
the
it
personnel
respectfully, you
bylaws?
can't say it black and white, because your interpretation of what those instructions are and how they apply to the situation may not be how the town manager sees it.
So,
Or they
Deb,
might
to
be.
your question, if we didn't have a town manager, we just had a board of selectmen, wouldn't it be the board of selectmen?
Yes?
Yes.
Oh, exactly.
So the fact that we have a town manager and that the selectmen have delegated all their responsibility, pretty much, to the town manager,
And the town approved it.
and the town approved it, seems to me that it's clear that the town manager has that responsibility.
Can I make a motion to adjourn this meeting? Because I just
I don't
said
know.
that.
It is clear. It's
It's clear as mud.
not followed. It's clear.
That's it. You got it. That's the reality of this. What it
interesting.
really comes down to, in my humble opinion, is that the reason that we're here is there was a group of citizens who were displeased, to present it lightly, and I keep going back, you shake your head no, and you, again, if they wanted, Blythe said it, either change the type of government that we have, or this does work, maybe it can be tweaked a little bit, but it works because of who the town leaders are and what responsibilities they want.
Oh, I don't disagree that the town manager role in the form of government doesn't work. That's not,
I
not
don't know what
at
you,
all.
I don't know what you're looking to do, Mr. Chairman, really, let me just finish, I don't mean this in an adversarial way.
You're in on the
I
roll.
don't know like what your position is and what changes you would be in favor of from this, but if you're looking to take away responsibilities from the town manager, they're obviously gonna go to the Board of Selectmen, and I didn't hear the three current members, or two out of the three current members, say that they wanted to assume those tasks. They didn't say that. They're not looking to do that. So future selectmen or women, select persons, better be ready to assume more of the old school responsibilities, which obviously the people running for office, I'm not sure they do want that. Ta-da.
I think it,
And to your comment about who enforces the regulations or where they go, having been a manager in a lot of different places, I always view the personnel regulations as an excuse for taking action rather than a reason.
That was very good, by the way, your analysis. I just want that on the record, my opinion about that.
Oh, wow. Kudos to Steve.
So I guess the question I have, in looking at, like I said, I'm like, of the opinion of what Deb's saying is, I don't see that has been working in the way that the
Right, I
government's
guess,
operating.
I guess we've had this conversation, and I don't know who, was I the person that held this?
Yes.
Okay. I guess after going through the discussion, I would say I wouldn't make any changes in lines 108 to 112. I just would hope that it would be followed.
So maybe would it a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen that the current Board of Selectmen clarify the town manager's responsibility with respect to personnel and personnel matters? Make sure that it's clear, that the new town manager understands
Yes, going forward, yeah.
what his
Right.
responsibilities are with regard to this, and that the selectmen can do that,
Right.
then this is probably fine the way it is, would you agree?
Yeah, again, it's, right, it's not so much the wording as the
Yeah,
implementation
and
of
the
it.
second
Or
recommendation,
lack thereof.
the second recommendation, to your point, might be that the personnel board needs to
Review the.
review the bylaw that deals with
Yeah, these matter,
the
right, enforcement of
Oh,
policy.
and so that would be in the form of a motion, so.
Yes,
that's-
I will second that motion.
okay.
You got it, Steve. Don't want to reword that one came up. Did you get that?
She's recording it,
Yeah.
so, right, you're recording it?
So what are we asking the personnel board to do? We're asking them to review the
The
bylaw that is,
Clarify
that clarifies the
grievance, the grievance process.
procedure with regard to grievances?
I think it's more than just grievances.
Well, no,
I think
yeah, this
there was-
doesn't cover
There was other
grievances.
things.
It's
Other
it's the
things.
personal bylaws.
It's the personal bylaws
I
in
just
general. I
used
think we're kind of
grievances as an
zeroing in on,
example.
I think,
I think a friendly amendment is to review the personal bylaws to
Right.
make them consistent with the town manager.
I'm sorry, how do we have any authority from our mandate to start making that suggestion or request? And we're not even the appointing authority. So where are we going with this?
So we can make the recommendation to the Board of Selectmen that they direct the personnel board to revise any of their review their bylaws so that they are in fact now consistent with.
As opposed to
With the current
change.
Town Manager Act,
Yeah.
if there are inconsistencies.
Right.
If there are any.
Right,
I don't know.
right.
Right, but I'm sure the selectmen are watching, and I'm sure that will get onto their agenda next meeting.
Really?
Yeah,
Not necessarily.
okay.
I think they're
Not
looking for us to come forward. So we're kind of going in circles in this one.
Yeah,
I kind of would go back to, so we have, I'm not sure if we have full motion.
Yeah, we have a
you made
motion.
one,
Okay.
yeah.
So
Can you
I
say
think
it
the
again?
motion is to recommend to the Board of Selectmen that they clarify the responsibilities with regard to personnel.
Can I help you?
Personnel matter, go ahead.
Okay, what if we just make a general suggestion, request, whatever the proper term is, to the selectmen, that they or whoever they assign, review the current Town Managers Act to make sure that it's consistent with the personnel bylaws, and then consider any changes that they might make.
That was one part of it. The other part of it was
To make sure that the
that
town
they,
manager.
That's our job.
that they are clear in delineating the responsibility of the new town manager with regard to personnel issues.
Well, I think it is. Again, when I read the paragraph I said, I think at 108, let's say through 110, the town manager be responsible for the administration of personnel and personal matters. That's really it right there. So anybody who reports to the Board of Selectmen, that town manager is responsible.
So what about people who don't?
Then that's the reality of, those elected officials, really.
I think the word would be reaffirm that particular section
There
to
you
the new town manager. Reaffirm that section so that, that way that just suggested that reaffirm lines 108 through 112 to the new town manager.
So in all the time that I've lived in town, I'm just aware of one instance where the Board of Selectmen used their wisdom to influence another elected individual to do something that a personnel board or a mayor or somebody might have suggested for reasons. Otherwise, it's never been an issue in this town that I'm aware of. You know what I'm talking about. You look
I do.
like you're
I-
clueless, but you're not. You're
I
very
have participated in that, so I know.
Yeah, I think the rest of our school is.
No, it's not important.
Again, I think to answer your question, it's really up to those elected boards to be responsible for managing their employees.
Yeah. Well, I think what we're saying is, in this particular case, we're suggesting to the Board of Selectmen.
Right.
That,
Recommending.
Recommending.
okay, recommending, okay, that they reaffirm section I, or item I, to the town manager, and that we recommend, or suggest to the Board of Selectmen that they ask the Personnel Board to review and make consistent with the act, the Town Manager Act, the personnel bylaws.
That would be a wise thing to do.
We agree on something. It's two things, Ellen. I mean,
Meeting's over.
wow. We live next door to each other. You
Proposed
can imagine
changes.
what it was like when we were.
Okay, I think I understand the amendment as it's been put forward.
After you explain.
I
to
do.
me, will you?
I got some
Did
notes.
you get that? Was it?
We have to go over it again, because now we've done 6 different amendments.
Okay, well,
We're
let's,
basically asking for the Board of Selectmen, the Personnel Board, to take a close look at this section and the personnel bylaws, identify inconsistencies and reaffirm it, or they may actually
Do you have the
kick
giggles right now?
it. I don't. It's
well, I think, just
this is
reaffirm.
good, we're getting through some content.
I think reaffirm is the way to describe it to the town
Yes.
manager of this section. That makes it pretty simple.
Well, that also would bring up the email correspondence that we got from the citizen that clearly pointed out that this has got a major disconnect in that
It's a
person's,
loophole.
in that person's opinion. It's a loophole
right,
and it's a
and that-
disconnect.
right.
Okay, so we're good with that one.
So I have a second for that.
Oh, yeah,
I have a
second.
for that. We have a second.
Yes.
Any further discussion? Hopefully not.
Did
Seeing
you-
none,
Did you get it clear?
all in
We
favor?
have to go
Aye.
back through the tape.
Aye, sorry, we
Make-
voted.
All, go ahead, I'm sorry, Devin.
We're making 2 recommendations,
Right.
one to the Board of Selectmen to reaffirm, and one to the Personnel Board to,
To the
The second
selectmen
one.
to ask the personnel board.
Personnel board.
Yep,
Correct.
that's right. Those are the 2.
So, any other discussion? Seeing none,
Done.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nope. Motion carries unanimously. 114 and 115.
Well, that's pretty much consistent with what we just went over in I.
Is this where is this the clause or whatever under which the town manager is reviewed? Because I didn't
agree,
see
'cause
that in
obviously
the act.
114 is inconsistent because certain town officers aren't
Right.
responsive to the Board of Selectmen.
Well, it does say right there, under the board in accordance with the personnel bylaw.
Personnel bylaws, I'll bet you a dollar, don't say anything about, that.
I don't know,
So
yeah. I'm not sure
it
about
probably
that.
should be changed to language to those town employees, because again,
Under the
all elected
jurisdiction of the
officials now get paid, so they're a town employee. So whoever reports to the Board of Selectmen, it should be more specific to those reporting to the Board of Selectmen, I think. You look like you don't agree.
No, I'm just trying to visualize exactly what the personnel.
How about this?
No, that's that's what a mosquito looks like when he hits a windshield.
We're neighbors.
It's got to be some interesting defense discussions. I would agree with your original point.
I'd agree with you then, Mr. Chairman.
That it
That needs to
says
be
all
looked at.
town officers and employees. It doesn't really exempt anybody.
Well,
And I think,
Right, it
I don't know
doesn't.
if I think the intent person was that they expect that there was personnel bylaw.
Right.
And that no matter who the hiring authority and manager is, that they're gonna consistently apply
Follow
the
the
same.
personnel bylaw.
Can I make a recommendation?
standards.
Line
No, the
14,
no, this-
114, just delineate, get rid of officers and have it say, evaluate all the town employees under the board or Board of Selectmen in accordance with the personnel bylaws. That would take care of that. I think. Simple.
well, is there anybody under the control of Board of Selectmen that would be called an officer?
Doesn't even matter. They're an employee. If they get paid, you're an employee of the town if you get paid. You get a 1099 or a W-2 or whatever, you're an employee. It used to be, there was some maybe that actually, always, I don't know anybody that is an officer or whatever that, compensation L. So I think that says it. If you're an employee and you report to the Board of Selectmen, I think that sentence says it.
So that's the other question too, that it's like, you're asking the town manager to do 54 or 55 job performance reviews? I don't think that's probably what was intended by the original authors of the language. I think they were intending that we have a single set of human resources and personnel, rules and regulations, and that would get uniformly applied.
And town officials, it's really not officers, it's an official. I think you're a town official if you're elected, like a treasurer, to me is a town official. I guess he or she could be an officer.
A town officer would, a building inspector could be an officer. The dog officer is an officer who reports to the Board of Selectmen.
Why is an officer as opposed to just an employee?
No, it's
Why?
but that's this title, it's a dog officer. That's a statutory description. That's a state description.
Okay, well, I don't think dog officer makes the person or an officer, but whatever you're comfortable with.
I think,
My
when
goal
you
is
say
to-
town officer, I think
Let me ask
town,
this question.
It's
The DPW director, does the DPW director perform performance reviews of all
Yes.
employees in the DPW? Not
So
the
does-
town manager?
no,
Correct.
and so does the town.
The DPW director.
Yeah.
yes.
DPW. Fire chief do the same thing, police chief do the same thing.
And
Yes.
Board of
So-
Health does the same.
And the chairman of the board of health does.
Right.
Okay,
Reviews.
so the way this is written, it gives the impression that the town manager is supposed to do that,
Yeah,
right?
correct.
No, that's true. That's the way this, if you would evaluate all town officers' employees, you're right.
So maybe it should say something closer to,
Well, yeah.
for those employees who report directly to the Board of Selectmen, like the dog officer and the tree warden and, those people.
Animal control officer who reports to the Board of Health, so.
But any employee that reports to the Board of to the Board of Selectmen directly, doesn't have a department manager, that person needs to be reviewed by the town, evaluated by the town manager.
Now, just out of curiosity,
But the town manager should then be responsible for making sure that the department managers do the evaluations.
and I would suspect that, right, so the question is the responsibility of doing the reviews, the evaluations, lie under the town manager, or does that fall under the department head? Because if the review's not done, who's going to be held accountable for that? The town manager.
If there is a department head, like DPW, police and fire, then it should be the manager of that group that is responsible, and the town manager should be making sure that they get done. And if there is no manager, like the dog officer or the tree warden, I don't know who else there would be, but there are going to be, employees where there are no department manager, then it would fall to the town manager to do their evaluation. Does that make sense?
No, I understand I do understand what you're saying. The trouble is that makes it,
So Deb, what is the personnel board's policy with
I think your description is how it should work.
how it should work?
Yeah.
Is that the way it's written in the policies, or do you not?
It says according to the personnel bylaws, and I don't have a copy with me.
I
To
bet
see.
you find it online.
Yeah, so I'm not sure.
So could that be if the personnel bylaws were written to describe what I just described, then the town manager's job is to follow that,
Right.
then the problem goes away, right?
Right.
I'll jump ahead of you. Like I said, I was looking at West Newbury's one I go to because it's probably the most current one.
Okay,
And I suspect all these towns and communities get this similar type of advice with language and interpretation.
yeah.
And they cover like these four with one section that's about half as long. And it says basically what we've been just talking about. It says that you're basically responsible for administering the personnel system policy.
Evaluation.
Basically,
Right.
it takes things that are spread
So
across.
if the personnel bylaws said the following department managers are responsible for performing annual employee evaluations, and listed them. And any town employee that does not, that reports directly to the Board of Selectmen, their evaluation is done by the town manager. If that's what it said, then,
That would get complex though, because then you'd have to change the personnel bylaws anytime you change something at an employee's position. But if the personnel bylaw is very said generally, all managers are responsible for doing the reviews of their direct reports, then that would
Okay.
cover it. Bingo.
but it doesn't cover the case where a employee doesn't report to a manager, just reports to the Board of Selectmen.
They're direct reports. Now,
Okay.
anybody that's under the auspices of the Board of Selectmen reports either to a manager or to the town manager.
Okay.
So
That
if
makes
you,
it
if
very
you said they're direct reports, then it covers it. And I don't know what the bylaw says, but that would be
So
the,
I can bring up an example. That's one of the last times that Bob would come into the fire department, and all the officers got trained to do evaluations, because of course, we have a large number of people, you have to go out that. Expecting somebody to do more than 6 or 8
Right.
reviews is ridiculous. We all
Yeah,
know that from real
Now,
life.
is the,
So I guess the question is like, did Board of Health, or the Board of Health?
well, there's only 3 of
trained to
us.
do that?
We're
But I
all-
mean, did you go through the same training that we went through?
No,
Because-
we just, oh yeah, we like you, okay, then we just sign it.
I'm just asking, I'm asking a
Did they go
question.
through the training? I don't know who went.
Bob did a 1-hour training session.
No, we did not go through
Okay,
it.
that's what I was asking a
No.
question.
I didn't go through it. Did you go through it? No.
but should the town manager be responsible for making sure that the reviews are done?
By default, the town manager, by default, that town manager has that responsibility
Where
because,
does it say that?
well, the town manager's responsibility is to do the review of his direct reports. And if his review of those direct reports would obviously include that as part of their job description as doing those reviews. So by default, that's part of the
Okay.
manager's responsibility, it would seem.
Essentially, we do a report on our employees. We turn that report to the personnel board every year. Now, there is a increase that is involved with every year. What we try to do is to let the selectmen know through the town manager that our employee is equal to that increase.
Yeah.
And the personnel board and I guess the town manager, I don't know how that section works. The employee is either getting the increase or not. So essentially, just about every employee is involved
Well,
with the town manager and the personnel board.
Well, it's a question of whether, there's a couple of questions that come up, whether or not they fit in the range. And if they're at the top of the range, then you have to change the job description to move to a different range.
That's the
Although-
personnel board.
But the personnel board says, okay, you have to write a justification for the change and then they go down the, anyway. But the long and short of it is that.
Town
we-
manager and the personnel board.
Right. Well, actually, the personnel board rates the job description
Right.
on a scale of whatever it is, I can't remember what it is that's done it, but, and then they make a recommendation, say, yeah, we recommend that they move grades, or we don't agree with the move, and then that's a whole different story. But the long and short of it is that the town manager's responsibility is the town manager's direct reports, and part of their direct reports responsibilities are to make sure that they do the reviews and that, so I think that covers it.
So,
Yeah, but again, it's all employees, when it comes down to it.
Right.
I would agree with your point. I think the intent is to have all employees.
I think-
And all
yeah.
officers, elected people who are compensated and act on behalf of the town.
Elected?
No.
Even elected people?
No, they don't get,
Well,
no.
that act on behalf of the town.
I don't think that's what Richard means.
No, Richard doesn't mean that everybody,
Not
all
elected.
elected.
Okay.
Not elected
Just,
people.
thank you.
Right, okay.
No,
Well, you don't want me
So all
doing a review
employees.
on the board of selectmen.
No.
Yeah.
No. Thank you.
There's a group of people who are elected and compensated by the town in the form of a stipend. You want to include those?
Say that again?
There is a group of people who are elected officials and compensated by the town in the form of a stipend, such as
Employees.
school committee members, library trustees, cemetery
Oh,
commissioners.
Those are elected positions. Those are elected positions. Those
Right.
are elected.
They are elected,
Right.
they're compensated.
Well, that doesn't matter. This is,
Well-
So you said if it was on payroll, and it's on the payroll.
So
They don't
Thank
report
you.
management-wise to the town manager, they report to the elected officials who
They
have
report to the
hired.
governing body.
They are a town employee, but
They
the
report
Board of
to the
Selectmen
governor.
only has authority to
Over the-
retain somebody that reports to them.
Well, I understand that, but you're wrestling with who would be included in that pool. And
No.
some areas along you said, if they get a paycheck from the town, they're included.
No.
Glenn, you know what the answer is? Elect the mayor and let the mayor handle all responsibilities, including, you know,
As it stands right now, elected officials are
Thanks, Matt.
compensated.
I think I appre-
Do what you want, I don't care.
yeah, no, I know.
Yeah.
I think we've covered it,
No,
though.
that's true.
That's a good point. That's the
Well,
point.
the governing body votes on
Right.
what the compensation is for elected officials. That's article number 3, I believe.
And getting elected is the other part of
Right,
the
get
job
elected.
performance evaluation.
Right,
Right.
exactly, you get elected.
It's article 3. Isn't it article 3? I think it's article 3.
So, somebody give me a time check, because I know we talked about. and you
It's
asked.
10 after 8.
Yep.
Okay, good.
Actually, it's 20.
I feel like we're kind of, at this point, is similar to the last one, where we've gone in quite an interesting circle that I think we all think we know what the act is intending. I think I'd agree with everybody, but I don't think that we fully,
I don't think we need to, I'm not sure that we need to make a change to 14 and 15.
A member who's not here flagged it, I didn't. So if you're looking at me, I didn't flag it.
I think I flagged that one.
Okay, oh, you did too, okay.
Yeah, that was mine,
So-
114, 115. So,
I would say that,
I feel like it goes back to
Personnel
that-
board,
that Board of Selectmen Personnel Board review.
right. I would agree. I would agree.
But I think from a committee's perspective, I think we've had enough discussion to prove that there are definitely some gaps and misunderstandings and.
But that can be
such.
cleared up by the personnel board, review of the personnel bylaws. I think we should give lots of work.
That's okay, I'm no longer on the personnel
Oh, you
board,
aren't?
so.
Oh, well, in that case, let's give them
So
some more
we can
stuff.
give them some more stuff, exactly.
Chairman, I'm
So I'm looking
gonna
for,
bid you adieu. I told you before, I'm not feeling up to it, it's an hour.
that's what,
and 45
it's just said,
minutes.
we've been here for quite some time. I would look to see if we want to
I'm-
call it a night and,
That's up to the committee. That relieves 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us, and it's a 9-man, it's up to you. If you're not feeling good, Alan, take off.
I'm of the same vote. I'd rather have us table this.
Okay.
We're pretty far along.
Shall we let's take action on 14 and 15.
Yeah,
and
we
then
can't leave it undone.
And, huh?
We can't leave 114 and 115 undone. That's
No,
where
let's get her done.
we have it open.
Wait a minute, what are you doing on 114 and 15?
We're trying to come up with a,
I would
We haven't
recommend,
made a motion yet.
I would make a motion that we refer this to be the same as we did with the one before it, to refer this to the personnel board to be consistent, that the personnel bylaws, see if the personnel bylaws are consistent with the town manager act.
so I'm referring it to the BOS and recommending.
I will second that.
I recommend referral to BOS to seek input from the,
Trust me, it'll be easy for the governing body to make a change to the personnel bylaws, and it will be to get the legislature to make a change to this. I can tell you that for certain.
yep.
Okay, so make a specific motion.
That we did, I just made a motion. Refer-
Second, is that seconded?
Refer this to the personnel
Personnel board.
board. Request that the Board of
The
Selectmen.
And Dick has seconded it.
Yeah.
Right.
Any further discussion?
No.
Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That one carries.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we adjourn, well, I make a motion.
We got one quick item to honor everybody's time. Item number 3, opportunity for the public to address the committee, review email correspondence from the public. I'm just going to send back a quick response back to everybody that's emailed us, thanking them for their items. And then I'm going to develop a log for us to look through and consider any formal actions for the next meeting. Does anybody see any problem with that?
I would
procedure?
just ask that like, I think I received 2 emails. One of them wasn't pertinent to this committee, the other one was, but it wasn't signed. I don't know who it was from. I couldn't tell from.
It was was it an email or?
It was an email.
And it's a-
Oh,
that's
and
a-
it's like a,
that's
You
a-
have a cat in the house?
Do I have a?
Either way, I'm gonna respond to the emails thanking them, and I will
Right.
ask
They are.
them to
If they want to
Their name, right, they
communicate.
want their-
communicate that officially
We
by
need a
sending
name.
it back to them.
right, we need a
Say,
name.
use it
We
as
have
a
several that have
liner,
names, we have several.
That's what you should do.
I think there's 2 that don't have names and 4.
I only
4 that
saw
do.
2, and like I said, one of them had something to do
So-
with reading articles at the town meetings.
Yeah, that one I would respectfully give to the selectmen.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was, I
One's
wanted
for
to
you.
read it once as opposed to twice.
So my question was, I just wanted to develop a log, so you guys
Sure,
understand
but
what I'm doing.
all I would say, encourage you to do is if you respond to these people who submitted, you need to make sure that they are willing to put their name to it.
Right.
If they're not willing to put their name to it,
Just,
I will do
I
that.
don't want to see it.
right.
Okay.
Only
Did they tell you
accepted.
that there was a great deal of money that they had for you and that you just...
Well, now in that case, and they were in Liberia, I think.
Don't fall for that.
They, and the. and the email
Okay,
came
so
from-
so I'm just gonna do some follow-up emails to those who didn't sign, I'm still gonna send back a response.
And we
Saying,
need to
could
send a
please-
thank you to Blythe.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
And you're gonna take care of that, Dan,
I
right?
will take care of that.
And when is our next?
2 weeks.
2 weeks, 10th.
2 weeks?
Yep,
August
10th.
10th and the 24th.
Yep, August
10th and the 24th.
So item number 4 is other items not reasonably anticipated, I don't know of anything else. So 5 is,
What night are you suggesting?
August 10th
it's 10th, it sounds like
The
that.
10th and the 24th.
and the 24th.
24th.
Okay.
Thank you.
August. All right, great.
We made good progress tonight, folks.
Yes, we did.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Have a motion to adjourn, have seconded.
Second,
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I am so
Thank you.
hungry.
Okay.